everything you see going on in society is walking into your workplace every single day. And if you look at the nightly news, is there any question, is there any reason to believe that that's not the case? A recent poll notes that 20% of the American workforce trusts their boss, meaning 80% of the American workforce right now does not trust their boss. Research done earlier in 2024 notes that 25 billion acts of incivility is going to show up in the American workplace. Bad blood was flowing down every hallway. Insanity, violence, the Wild West, personal intimidation, cars being vandalized in the company parking lot, cars being keyed, tires being slashed. They were hateful, they were upset, they were angry. When I entered in, I tried to bring some sanity with me, but it was too hateful. And I started to suffer the wrath of their violence. My car was getting keyed, my tires were being slashed, and everybody was fighting like hell to stay off my shift. They didn't want anything to do with me. 9 months later, they were fighting like hell to get onto my shift. And 5 years later, this agency became an industry-wide, award-winning leader. So, I was fascinated. Aside from the violence I was suffering, how could it get this bad? What happens when things go terribly wrong that brings this group of humans to this particular state? So here's the story. When we are disempowered, we start to feel frustrated. And if we're frustrated long enough, we start to become angry. And if we're angry long enough, we start to hate. And if we hate long enough, we start to hate things, and then we start to hate people. And then we're so hateful, we're so angry, we forget the original reason we even started feeling that way. If you don't believe it, look at the nightly news. If you're curious as to why people burn down their own neighborhoods, this is the reason. That hate came from anger, came from frustration, came from feeling disempowered. So I started to do the calculation. I started to follow that story. And what it told me is that the only way I'm going to be able to help these people out is to empower them. So all of a sudden, I'm finding myself where I have to empower the very same people that are vandalizing my car every day. Wrap your head around that for a while. So that's what I did. So path number one was something that was getting me closer to building an environment that I was buffeting against society's forces. So let me talk about that briefly. A recent poll notes that 20% of the American workforce trusts their boss, meaning 80% of the American workforce right now does not trust their boss. Research done earlier in 2024 notes that 25 billion acts of incivility is going to show up in the American workplace. And if you look at the nightly news, is there any question, is there any reason to believe that that's not the case? Because everything you see going on in society is walking into your workplace every single day. So this is what happened. I did two things that you can use wherever humans group. Number one, when they started feeling angry, I started listening. And I started listening. And I started listening. And it didn't matter how pissed off they were at me, I just kept listening. And as I listened, I started to find opportunities where I could use their ideas to change their work culture. The moment I started connecting those dots, they started thinking, aha, actually, I do have control over my work culture. There is something I can do about it. Because power is control. More power is empowerment. So when they started connecting the dots on what they were telling me and the changes I started making in the work culture based on their ideas, they started to understand, there is a pathway forward. And I gained just a few allies and started gaining more allies as time went on. But that's not enough. The second thing I did, which got my car absolutely ravaged, was I required that people treat each other with dignity and respect on a predictable and consistent basis as a condition of employment. Oh yeah. They hated me for that. They thought, what kind of bullshit is this? So, amazing things start to happen. If you demonstrate dignity and respect on a predictable and consistent basis, I'm going to be able to bypass your thinking process. And your response is going to be involuntary. An involuntary response to collaborate. You can't help yourself. Now, at first there's some resistance, but it falls to the wayside. The amazing thing that happens, even if they're yelling in your face, if you respond with dignity and respect on a consistent and predictable basis, you're in command of the conversation. And they'll end up building a relationship with you around your needs. So let me say that again because it's really important. And chances are it's the first time you've ever heard it. If you treat people with dignity and respect on a consistent and predictable basis, they'll start building a relationship with you around your needs. So once I required the entire shift to do that, condition of employment, I had their feet at the fire. The amazing thing that they started to witness is that the people around them, who they hated, started building a relationship with them around their needs. And that's when everything changed. That's when hate went away. Sanity, camaraderie, collaboration came in. And people were fighting like hell to get on my shift. And just a few years later, an award-winning industry leader to this day. So, no more hating. Yeah, no more hating. Thank you.